Live on Facebook.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live on Facebook with the inimitable, indestructible, and ever evolving Alexander Reid, folks.
And the master, wonderful Prash.
Namaste. Good evening to everyone out there on Facebook land, wherever you are.
What's inimitable, Prash?
Inimitable.
What's inimitable?
It's kind of like irrepressible, a combination of irrepressible and
what's irrepressible?
You cannot be kept down. You cannot keep a good man down.
Sorry?
You cannot keep a good man down, they say. That's irrepressible. And it's funny we say that. We're talking about irrepressible right here. And this really is quite appropriate, or using the subject from our chat last week, it's quite synchronicitous that we're talking about irrepressibility. And
incidentally, just talking about the synchronicity, who's noticed, who out there's noticed? I've noticed since we've been talking about synchronicity, I've become extremely aware. What do you call it? The activating system on that? When you think about something, all of a sudden you notice it all the time. Like if I talk about red Ferraris, you'll start seeing red Ferraris in your everyday life. So what was that? Something activating system you called it?
We talked about our reticular activating system. We talk about the reticular activating system in coaching or in psychology. It's the part of our brain that is able to hone in like a homing missile on those things that matter to us, those things that we are seeking to attract in our life.
But guys, I don't want to hijack the talk tonight on synchronicity, but I just bring it up very briefly to mention, once you become aware of it, you're going to start noticing things, so much synchronicity, as Prash just said. We're going to find it again and again. And I can't stop finding it now everywhere. And it's the universe in a nutshell saying, got your back. We're here, the magic.
It is so true. And I think it's important for us to recognize that synchronicity does play a part in our lives. But specifically, and I think what I want to touch on here is this subject here. I think this is really close to heart. The subject that we're talking about is that boys don't cry. And
just before we get cracking, though, sorry, Prash, just before we get cracking, can we make sure everyone can hear? Because there were some problems last week. Yeah, how are we doing, guys and girls? Is that we got people on? Can you hear us?
We have people on. We are good. We do have people on. We have people tuned in. So hopefully, guys, you can hear us. If not, drop us a line. Let us know. Otherwise, we're going to assume you can hear us. So let's talk about this. Big boys don't cry. It's a subject that is close to a lot of people's hearts because as men, we put on a stigma. Ladies, if you've tuned in, we encourage you to share this or invite your male friends, your male significant others, family members, whoever it is you feel can benefit from this to tune in, because this really affects all of us. Anyone who's in connection, who's in contact with other men, whichever your gender is, can appreciate how men in society since the dawn of time have had certain labels put upon them. And one of the biggest labels is that men don't cry. Boys don't cry. Men don't cry. Alex? This is something close to your heart.
I think there's, in recent years, let's say in the last 100 or so years, not also, around 80 years, women have started to do masculine jobs and started to take, in the Western world, the similar jobs as men. There is becoming a balance. But the thing is, women have learned to be masculine, and men, we have, for balance, for harmony, we all, as a man or woman, we both have a masculine and a feminine side.
Right.
And we want that balance and that harmony, and it's learning to have that balance and harmony. Now, women have learned, they've had a bit of a head start in recent years on how to use their masculine side. Whereas au contraire, men, big boys don't cry. We've not been allowed to cry. It's considered weak. I always used to blame my poor mother, because when I was 8 years old, I got in a fight and I came home crying profusely, and she wanted to help me, and I couldn't stop crying because I was hysterical. And she said, "Come on, big boys don't cry," and I stopped crying. I think I've cried. I cry now, but we'll talk about that in a second. But since that time, I cried about 5 times in my entire life.
It is an epidemic. It's an emotional drain. It's an emotional disadvantage, and it's a challenge for a lot of people. And folks, if you're tuning in, if you can relate to this, if you know somebody who's going through this, who's experienced this, feel free to add your comments and share your views on this controversial subject, that grown men aren't supposed to cry. Grown men aren't supposed to express their vulnerability, or maybe they can only express their vulnerability to their tribe, to their men, and they can't show it anywhere else. Where are these so-called rules coming from? And why is it that so many of us are programmed, especially as men, to behave in this way, to feel obligated that we've got to behave in this way, and then suffer? Mental health is at all level high, right, Alex? We've been talking about this. We've talked about it on our retreat. Talk about it.
Our age group, Prash, we're the most primed to feel suicidal. I don't want to go into that. I mean, I felt very suicidal many times.
So.
I'm not going to do that, but it's why is that? Because we are not having the techniques and the know-how on how to cope with these emotions,
right?
And we need to learn these tactics. And literally, I'm going to get straight into the advice. Simply by just talking like this and looking at other fellow men, warriors, who
are
going through the same thing, you can realize it's a great coping mechanism. Crying releases. Let me talk to me last night. Why we're even doing this post? First of all, I did the post. I did the picture of me doing a cage fight, all down and disheveled. Although I'd won that fight, I was crying inside. We take on habits and unfunctional, that don't serve us, habits which can destroy us. Last night, I cried hysterically and I felt uncomfortable. And I can't practice what we're doing in our retreats, which we have on the 27th to the 29th in Harlow, Essex, our mind, body, spirit rejuvenation retreats, teaching how to hack all these different states where you can live a harmonious life. How can I teach this and not go into? I was crying and I felt silly, so I watched the film. I'm gonna play it if we get a chance at our retreat. It's called A Dog's Journey. It's about reincarnation, and it was sad. It touched on a lot of facets for me in my own life in terms of sadness. My mother, I've lost my father, and my mother is yeah, I think we know what I'm going to say. And the people died at the end, and I couldn't stop crying, and I had such sorrow. I was grieving, and I felt, this is crazy. My mother has Alzheimer's. It's like I feel like I'm losing her already, and I felt such, and Nicola, my partner, was saying it's okay. And do you know what? The second she said it's okay, I stopped crying. I controlled it. I went, yeah, that's right. I'm fine. And then I thought to myself, I was angry at her because I wanted to go into that emotion.
You wanted to, but you can't. Something holds us back. What is that force?
She was trying to help me. But I mean, actually, she wasn't, because my stiff upper lip, big boys don't cry. Yeah, I'm right. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. So I stopped crying, and then I actually intellectualized it with my awareness, which we teach you on our retreat, with my meditation. I thought, no, it's not okay. And I said, Nicola, no, it's not okay.
Sure.
And with that, I started thinking about the emotions again. I thought, and the sorrow and the sadness came, and the grief came. And why would anyone want to go there? Why, Prash, would we want to go into grief and feel miserable? But it was so essential. I cried uncontrolled. I wailed. I actually I filmed myself for the last 30 seconds because I'm fascinated at what's going on in my mind. I was like almost going crazy. Why am I doing this? I can't control myself. It's such grief. And and then I did. It wasn't better. I didn't feel better. But in the morning, I woke up. I slept okay. I woke up and I felt clean. I don't understand what that is. I felt clean though.
So it's an emotion. That is an emotion. That is the result of purging emotions. It's the result of expressing those emotions rather than embedding those emotions. Instead of repressing the emotions or giving them a space to breathe, we're giving them space to express themselves. And that purging helps us to feel better. Just like purging after we've had a lot of food or we've got an upset tummy, vomiting, it may feel unpleasant at the time. And it's a really good analogy because like vomiting, it doesn't feel pleasant at the time when we're vomiting, when we're purging, when we're cleansing. But once it's out, there is a sense of relief. There is a sense of, wow.
One of the things was the fear of going into the unknown. And what I know is I've got to be big and strong. Listen, I know all this stuff. It's all very well knowing it, but accessing it. So I allowed myself to go into it. And I was like, a good cry. What was I been missing all these years? A good cry, so good for you. Before, when I cried, I felt ashamed. I didn't feel ashamed last night. I felt a bit silly because it was my reference point. Right. And I thought, I woke up and I thought, that's powerful. And now let's look at some of the most powerful people in our history. Let's look at someone called Mike Tyson. He would often cry before fights. Tito Ortiz, another world champion light heavyweight, would cry often before fights. They're letting out the emotions. And if it's good enough for them to go into battle, I often wonder, look at the Spartans, many ancient warriors.
Many.
Would they cry?
Of course. It was, people think it's just a battle cry, but it wasn't just a battle cry. There were tears. There were tears of emotion, tears of sorrow at losing one's compatriot, one's comrade, tears of loss of somebody in your army, tears of missing out on your family. I mean, look at the oldest epic known to mankind, the Bhagavad Gita from the Mahabharat, right? The oldest poem known to mankind.
To explain this a little bit, but I am aware, and I find this fascinating, but for those who are not adept in Hindu culture and the texts.
So the Mahabharat is arguably the longest poem of its type known to mankind, and it's significantly longer than Paradise Lost. By those of you who are readers, avid readers, will know Milton's classic Paradise Lost, and it's a heck of a lot longer than that. And Mahabharat is the history of that part of the world that currently known as India, and predates Hinduism, predates all kinds of religions. We're talking about a history that goes back thousands of years, and the Mahabharat captures documented accounts of those dynasties, those empires that existed over 5,500 years ago, backwards in time. And it captures a war, a huge scale war that took place. And the Bhagavad Gita, which is regarded as, one of the greatest philosophical and spiritual books known to mankind, captures the dichotomy of a soldier who has to fight against unholy, unfair, and evil forces. But it just so happens that the other side has his grandfather, his cousins. He has to kill his own family members who have aligned themselves with the baddies, basically. And he cries tears that he has to kill the very people who taught him, who raised him, who he played with as a kid, his cousins. And the Bhagavad Gita uses this analogy to bring out themes like self-sacrifice, detachment, expression of one's emotion, embracing the now, living in the present moment, not thinking too far in the future, not dwelling on the past, but being in the now. And for a book that was capturing this philosophy 5,500 years ago, it's as relevant now to anyone of any race, religion, or culture as it was then. And it harks to the point that we're discussing in this session right now, which is it's okay for us to express our emotions. And if a soldier or a warrior who is considered to be the bravest person, a archetype of pure masculinity, can express those sentiments, those soft sentiments, compassion for children, compassion for others who are less capable than him, then surely it's okay for us to express our pain, our sorrow, our grief at what we've experienced, Alex. And I think it's therefore perfectly appropriate. And I guess that's the message you want to share, right?
So
okay.
I get this, Prash, because I've gone through this journey of being a tough guy and like big boys don't cry. And I understand the cry in a battle, but let's, and I'm going to ask you this as if I hadn't gone through this journey. Crying in a battle, the war cry, you've lost your friends, your comrades, that cry of passion will drive you forward. But the cry of sorrow, it's okay to cry a lost comrade, comrade on the battlefield. That's a manly endeavor, and that's good. That would be seen honorable. I'm talking about myself here. When I was 20 years younger, 10 years younger, 5 years younger, only 5 years ago. It's only in the last 5 years I started having this real spiritual awakening. If I felt like crying over my emotions because someone's upset me, I would feel weak. And I wouldn't cry. I would stop myself from crying.
Right.
What would you say to a young 20, 25, 30, 40, maybe even a 50-year-old? I mean, you don't know. Some people will never cry. They can hold their emotions up and then they go and do the destructive patterns in their life. How would you get them to cry, or what would you say to them?
Part of the process involves a degree of acceptability, on this cultivating the notion, or the fact really, that it's okay to express. First, we've got to accept that it's okay. Until we accept that we're okay to do that, we're not going to do it. That's one. So first, it's starting to change our mindset, and that, by the way, happens through this kind of dialogue. It happens
1,000,000%. Intellectualizing people. Once you get this knowledge, guys, once you increase your brain power, you're going to realize, hang on a minute, this is a better way to do things. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so one, it becomes awareness, becoming accepting that it's okay to do so. That happens through this kind of dialogue, through media, through press, through articles, through discussions with our friends, our family members. And if we don't have that outlet, guess what? It just begins by reprogramming ourselves to say, it's okay. You know what? It's all right. Once you start to accept that it's acceptable to be able to express emotions, the second thing is to cultivate a sense of non-judgmentalism, even temporarily. That is to say, we need to learn to not, even temporarily, to suspend our judgment about what we're feeling. It's very easy to judge ourselves, and then we stop ourselves from expressing because we go, oh no, I can't do that. I'm going to be like a coward. Or you judge yourself. No, somebody will feel I'm a weakling.
I did it just last night.
Right? And part of the judgment comes from, guess where? Our childhood, our parents, societal conditioning, our work colleagues, our peer group, because they don't cry. We don't see them cry, so we can't. Any of those things, aforementioned things, start to program us, and therefore we need to learn to recognize those things. I'm just saying, we need to learn to recognize those things and just temporarily even just suspend the judgment and just say, you know what, for now, I'm not going to judge myself. If I want to cry, I'm going to cry. I'm not even going to judge it. But you know, if somebody saw you cry, they're going to see you're a wuss. Nah, forget it. Oh yeah, but if you cry, what happens if you get depressed? And what happens if I get depressed and I never come out of the black hole if I start crying and expressing my emotions? All of these are judgments. We need to temporarily disregard those judgments and create that space where we can do what you did last night.
Let's flip this, right? Okay, because we're all happy, hippie, crying, happy to cry, right? There's got to be a time. We all know those people who we believe cry a bit too much, and look, I now, me and you, forget those people we know who cry too much. I'm not going to be judgmental on them, but I'm going to be judgmental on myself. There might be a time when it might not serve me to cry. I might need to one, fake it. Two, take on a different mindset, because it's not going to serve you in that situation.
Totally. And you very eloquently described it in one of our previous lives together, where you talked about having the need to have multiple hats that we wear, like Alex 2.0, Alex 1.0, Alex 1.1. So we have slightly different personas according to the situation. Let's say, for example, there is a situation where we need to be strong for people around us because something traumatic's happened. We naturally feel the loss or the pain or the emotion, but we need to be strong for these people over here. So times like that may warrant us to suppress our emotions temporarily, to keep a strong face, to keep stum, to maintain that stiff upper lip. So there's always a time and place for us to temporarily suspend it. But notice the distinction. Temporarily suspend those emotions, not do what our ancestors have done for centuries, which is bury them deep inside and just assume they're going to be dealt with. I get this with coaching clients all the time. Half the coaching clients I ever encountered come with problems of repressed emotions that have been trapped. They manifest as physical illnesses, emotional disorders, negative personality disorders, social inadequacies, difficulties in relationships, or managing weight. Any number of these spectrum of issues come around because we don't give ourselves that expression outlet. So yeah, in answer to your question, if we have to temporarily suspend it, okay.
But it's temporary. We need to let it out somewhere.
It's got to be out somewhere and with someone. And if we can't find a someone, here's the other problem. We find that a lot of people feel that they need to let it out alone with some alcohol. Other people feel that they can only let it out with somebody.
Yeah.
And that's the only place. We've got to learn to be able to express that without the need for a crutch, meaning another person or a substance. And that's something we're only going to get if we start to experience that vomiting. Sit with it for a few minutes at a time, 3-4 minutes, have a cry for 5 minutes, have a cry, get a pillow, put it over and just shout it out. Express how you feel you need to, wherever you feel safe to do so. It doesn't have to be with people.
I just want to go back on, and I want to apologize. I might come across a little bit judgmental on it. We all know people who might want to cry too much. That's a bit unfair, because I'm not being religious here. Walk a mile in a man's sandals, and you can
Beautiful
until you've. I don't know what they've gone through, but we do come across people who seem to go on. I'm not going to say the victim mindset. That there's they could have had some horrible stuff going on to them,
right.
And you think you get a sixth sense. You think, hang on, that's not serving you. There is a time to cry again. And what would you say to those sorts of people who want to be helped? Look, I'm aware I'm already sad and I'm miserable. And I've cried too much. I cry everything. If they're aware, they've taken the first and magnificent step in saying, right, I need to try and sort this out.
So from acceptance, permission to be able to cry, accept that it's okay to cry. Then we move into expressing. We talked about how we then move into expressing it, allowing it, being in the present. Then the third step is taking responsibility. That is to say, we need to learn to take responsibility after we've expressed. Unfortunately, a lot of people try to take responsibility before they've grieved. So before they've expressed their emotions, they take responsibility before. And that doesn't always serve us very well to do that, because that means that the imprint of that emotion, that trauma, hasn't had an outlet, and so it gets buried inside. And then the decision and the direction and the actions that we take, the behavior that we then exhibit by taking responsibility, is not always best for us, nor is it best for the people around us. And we see this, right? We see this in situations in couples, right? In families, right? Where something, for example, let's say that there's a father, there's a family where they lose their child, a teenage child drowns, right? I've heard of this with one of my friends, right? He has a coaching client, and he's coaching the father. The father lost their teenage child due to some incompetencies, and that child died. Ever since that, he never grieved. The father never grieved. And instead, what he did is he took a super hardline stance with the rest of his family that was alive, super protective. He wouldn't let his daughter go anywhere. He was always checking on his wife. It became to the extreme. It was like suffocating the family because he hadn't taken time to grieve, to accept that it's okay to grieve, to cry, to allow that grief to happen, to express it, and then to own it after. And therefore, the third step in this, in the architecture of allowing grown men to cry, or grown anyone to cry for that matter, is taking responsibility. It starts with acceptance, mindful of time on this live now. It starts with acceptance, it moves into expression, and then it moves into accepting responsibility, meaning, as you rightly said, what are you going to do? Just keep crying and crying and crying and then forget about it? Or are you going to cry and say, you know what? What have I learned from this lesson? What responsibility am I going to take? Even if the responsibility is, I'm not going to do this again, or I'm going to act differently in this situation, or I'm going to love the person who's still living with me better than the person I lost.
Guys, I'm just going to wrap up on what I've taken away from my own experience of listening to yourself, Prash. And the best thing that we've done in the last several years of knowing yourself and being on this spiritual journey is awareness.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Crying, I've learned that crying, it doesn't take away the problem and it doesn't solve the challenges, but it helps me deal. And I've only sort of really come to that epiphany last night. I know this intellectually for years. Last night it's letting yourself. Sometimes some of the stuff is gonna go in here, but it's gonna go straight through the other side, and it could take a while until you experience it firsthand. And it's having just conversations like this, which is the sort of conversations we're going to be having on our retreat, which are going to make you realize, hang on, give you a few survival techniques. You know, if you're going out in the jungle, you might want to do a quick survival course on first aid. You know, this is a few survival course on your heart.
Yeah, so true, so true. And that's what we have got lined, Alex, just to share with all of you who are with us. Our signature detox and transformation retreat is just under 7 weeks away from the Friday 27th of March until Sunday 29th of March, 6 p.m. on Friday till 6 p.m. on Sunday. So those of you who are working don't have to take a full day off work, just come along from 6 p.m. onwards on the Friday. It is a weekend packed with powerful activities and relaxation and rejuvenation and a chance to express yourself, be you, and learn to evolve yourself to the next level. Alex, you want to tell them what we got in store?
We have yoga, although it's not a yoga retreat. We have martial arts, although we're not going to make you killers. We've got conscious breathing, conscious hiking, fantastic food, great talks.
Gourmet plant-based cuisine for the whole weekend. You'll be having an incredible vegan lineup that will really surprise you.
And a lot of fun. And a place to express yourself and to ask the questions without any judgment.
Amen to that. And that's what we've got lined up. The link is in this live. So if you're watching this live or on the replay, take a look at the link at urbanspirituality.co/detox-retreat. Drop us a line if you're interested in joining us. We're taking a handful of people and we'd love to have a discussion and see if we can align ourselves.
Any questions, guys, drop us a line. I will bid you adieu, young man.
You too, Alex. And thank you for just being thank you for just being a stand for men, for masculinity, by showing this vulnerable side of yourself and being straight up and generous enough to share this with this audience out there.
What may allow me to do it was realizing to be a real man was to allow me to do this. It was going to make me more powerful. Ooh, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Want to be a real badass ninja killer? Let's get some tears out.
Get some tears out. And not only that, but by doing this, these kinds of conversations help people to raise that first out of the 3 steps in that architecture, in that journey, right? Acceptance, acceptability.
Awareness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like awareness and acceptability. Yeah, it's all right to discuss this subject openly. It's okay to cry. I didn't cry for years after, until I lost my mom, and then I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried, and I felt a lot better after I cried. So for all of us out there, parents, men, women, let's make it more acceptable to cry, and let's make it okay to talk about subjects like mental health, depression, and suicide. And I know, Alex, those are topics that are close to your heart as well, and we will hopefully explore some of those as the weeks and the months go past as well.
It's a fun journey, guys. That's all I can say, because I'm just going to leave you with this. When I cried, I started to think about what was really important in my life. I need to contact this person. I need to contact that person. And I still have my barriers. We all have our barriers.
Yeah.
We all have our, but
yeah,
they're coming down. And together we can show you how I brought my barriers down. You can bring your barriers down in a good way, for your health, for your vitality, and for your to thrive in life. I love you and leave you. Talk to you, mate. Bye-bye.
Take care, Alex.